And I tell you what, not again. Another manager that's basically been sacked and proven themselves not to be capable at big clubs wants Erik ten Hag's job. Apparently, Julian Nagelsmann is now putting his cap in the ring. And I say, not again. When will this madness stop? And when are we going to get some clarity? And you know, I genuinely am starting to, and this will be a big up. Big up the Ten Hag outers. You know the rules. I genuinely think that I'm starting to get concerned about this now because I'm not actually convinced that Ineos are doing enough to stop this nonsense that is around Ten Hag and this momentum that we're building. Also want to talk about Forsen. There are strong rumours going around that Forsen will start for Manchester United tomorrow in a front three with Rashford and Garnacho. What are your thoughts about that? Also, there are rumours... I'm sort of walking into a trap here. I probably shouldn't say anything about it because I'll get into trouble. Yeah, I'll explain why I'm not going to do it because it's not right to do it because we've got a match tomorrow. I don't know. Come back to me in a few minutes on this one. I've been down the pub. I've been running up there. If I say it, you'll go, "What? Who is it?" And then I can't say who it is because it's not right to say it. But then I'll say, "Don't worry about it," and then you'll start figuring out what it is. I'll figure it out. Anyway, it's to do with the match tomorrow. But that hill, I'm running. I go down the pub on a Friday night. I always run up the hill after my last pint, and that hill is getting bigger because I'm a little bit later tonight. But I think the hill that Erik ten Hag is climbing to keep his job inexplicably seems to get bigger as well. And we will be taking your questions. It's the Friday night show. It's always a different type of vibe. Member for 21 months, Tony Bain, thank you very much. So basically, tonight, I'm looking at my phone. Julian Nagelsmann really wants the Manchester United job, and he's on the short list for Ineos. And I'm like, two things. First of all, I don't give a shit about Julian Nagelsmann whether he wants the Man United job. Last time I checked, he was doing a shit job for Germany, and he got sacked by Bayern Munich. And yesterday it was Tuchel, who did a shit job at Bayern Munich, got sacked by Chelsea, got sacked by PSG. And a couple of weeks ago, it was Mourinho, who's been sacked by Chelsea, sacked by Man United, sacked by Spurs, and sacked by Roma. And I'm like, there's a running theme here. Get sacked and put yourself forward for the Man United job. And look, I have theories as to why sacking Ten Hag is absolutely stupid. And, you know, we can get into that until the cows come home. And we did a poll last night where 90% of the fan base in this community want Ten Hag to stay. But I've got to be honest, I've listened to some of the Sir Jim Radcliffe interviews, and I've also listened to the silence around Ten Hag. And, you know, Ten Hag, a large part of me thinks Ten Hag is going to be part of the journey. And I listened to Ten Hag in the press conference, and I think, yes, he definitely will be. And I listened to what Ineos want to do, and I think definitely he will be. But I do think they do need to stop this. There is, to the Ten Hag out movement, they feel like they've got the foot in the door and it's not slammed. They feel like there is an opportunity. They feel like Ineos might sack him and want their own man. And I think United need to just come out and slam the door on it, because I don't think it's particularly helpful when we've got the injury crisis that we've got, when we've fought ourselves back into a top four race. It's not helpful mentally for the fans and the players to think, well, they might change the manager in the summer anyway. And I think it's fraught with danger. But I've always acknowledged as well that when you get new owners, and we have got new owners in relation to the football side of things, percentage-wise, I'd say well over 50% of new owners end up wanting to bring their own person in, because Ten Hag wasn't chosen by them. And in the same way that Ten Hag said, well, Sancho's not my player, it's not my responsibility to make Sancho be good, the same thing can be said by Ineos. Well, Ten Hag's not our manager. We didn't appoint Ten Hag. The Glazers, Richard Arnold and John Murtagh did. And that is detrimental to Ten Hag, because new people come in and go, well, this is not our choice. This is the choice that we've inherited. And that's the danger. I think that Ineos would be remarkably naive and silly to replace our manager this summer for many reasons. But I also have to acknowledge it feels like there's a gap. It feels like there is a potential for it to happen. And that can only be because this new ownership want to bring their own person in. But I would urge them to look at it and go, the reason Ten Hag got the job was because he was fan appointed. The media and a lot of people wanted Poch, and it was the fans who said Ten Hag was the right guy. And 18 months later to sack him, you're sacking a fan appointment. It wasn't the Glazers and Richard Arnold and John Murtaugh that went, Eric Ten Hag's the guy. It was a very big fan movement that wanted Ten Hag. And if you remove him, you're only removing him because you want to do your own thing. And what they should remember is that it was actually a fan appointment, Ten Hag. It was ridiculously fan-centric. The media wanted Pochettino. So I also look at it and I go, it's very, very clear to me that Garnacho, Rasmus, Mainu, Martinez, Luke Shaw, Onana, Delo, there's a lot of players in that team that are 100% behind this manager and are part of the future of this football club. Why change a manager where your best players want this manager? And also, some of those best players are young players being developed by that manager. And also, the other thing, which I've said, and I'm not going to get into deeply, is if you change your manager in the summer, you will not get the clear out that we all know we need. Because what are we creating? If we sack Ten Hag and we bring in Nagelsmann or Tuchel or Potter, and then we clear 9 players out, what's the point in the manager? You can't bring in Nagelsmann and then say we're selling 10 players. He hasn't had time to assess them. What are we running then? A dictatorship where the manager's just a puppet on a string? I don't want that. I want the manager actually to be involved in the choices of what we do with players leaving the club. So for me, it's threefold. One, Ten Hag was a fan appointment and the club should respect that. Two, the vast majority of players that are the future of this club are firmly behind Ten Hag. And three, if we're going to clear a load of players out, you can't really do that with a new manager because they're going to go, well, I haven't had time to assess them. So the only thing, and look, I will always play devil's advocate. I will always be strong about my opinion, and you know my opinion, but I will always play devil's advocate. I don't want the Ten Hag outers to win. I think they're toxic. I think they're simple. I don't think they convey any real semblance of sensibility. But I will always respect other opinions and try and bring them into the show. And in doing that, I've got to say, as somebody who's firmly Ten Hag in because I think it's for the betterment of the football club, I don't think Ineos at the moment are really making it clear that Ten Hag is their guy. Now, are they doing that because it's not the end of the season? And if United went and lost 15 games in a row, they'd look really stupid. I think that's actually the truth. But it does allow for this area of uncertainty that people will seep their poison into. Now, I'm going to shock you here. I said a couple of weeks ago that I think Ineos should come out and say, Ten Hag is the man, here's a new contract. But I also acknowledge that when I said it a couple of weeks ago, I finished the show and I actually said to myself, you're a big fat hypocrite. And I'm not being fattest. I mean, like, you're a very big hypocrite, which is the definition of fat. No humans are harmed with that statement of fatism. I am a massive hypocrite by saying Ineos should come out and hand Ten Hag a new contract. And the reason I'm a hypocrite is that I do want Ineos to come out and back the manager because I think he deserves it. But ultimately, I sort of agree with them not doing it in a business sense. And what I mean by this is, and I'll get into your comments in a minute, we are fans. I don't want Sir Jim Ratcliffe to be a fan. I know he is, but I actually think it's damaging. I want him to be a business guy as well, which is hard. It's hard to do business and fanism. But what I mean by that is that when we sacked Mourinho, the club said, and Ed Woodward said, we are not going to rush into any decisions. We are going to do a big, big assessment of what's gone wrong, and we will appoint a manager in the summer. And then Solskjaer came in. We're all singing about a bus. And Ed Woodward joined us and gave him a contract in March. And then we fucked up top four. and realised maybe Solskjaer's not the guy, but we'd already given the contract. So I actually agree that Ineos should wait until the end of the season for Ten Hag, because what if they go in March, there's your new contract, you are the guy, and then as soon as that contract's given, we go and lose 6-7 games in a row. Solskjaer went and got stuffed at Everton after we gave him a new contract. So it's just one of those. It's very similar to the Mason Greenwood situation, in the sense that people probably want clarity, but the business decision is to wait until the summer. And I think with Ten Hag, people want clarity, but the business decision is to wait until the summer. The problem with that is it creates this grey area where the Nagelsmanns and the Tuchels and the Mourinho rumours can come inside. And also it creates this grey area where the Ten Hag out movement can operate and try to gather steam. I was talking to a Ten Hag outer today and I said, I find it absolutely, I actually said, I don't really think you're a fan of Man United. And they got very offended by it. And I knew they would, because it was a very low blow. But I said, I don't think you're a fan of Manchester United. And they were like, well, I am. I just don't think Ten Hag's good enough. But I said, I don't think you are a fan, because you're not getting any enjoyment out of the last 4 games. I said, I'm not saying we were vintage United, but they were really enjoyable. Kobe Mainoo with a late winner. Aston Villa, McTominay, late winner. Luton hanging on at the end in a very exciting game. West Ham was a good game. There's 4 games that I've thoroughly enjoyed. But you're thinking about Ten Hag out, and I know how that goes. You want to get proven right. So when Mainoo scores the late winner, you're actually disappointed, really, if you're being honest with yourself, because you're ready to go on socials when we draw with Wolves and go, fucking manager, he's blown a lead, this is why he's got to go. And then Mainoo scores and you're like, your script is in the bin. And they were really offended by it, because they were like, well, I am a Man United fan. That's why I want to get rid of Ten Hag, because I think we'll be better off without him. And I said, but to me, I don't think you are a Man United fan, because I know that you are, but I don't think you're allowing yourself to be one. I'm not saying you're factually not a United fan, but what I'm saying is you're not allowing yourself to be a United fan, because a United fan to me should be enjoying victories like that. But you've allowed yourself to move away from the enjoyment of being a Man United fan into a world of being proven right about the manager. You're not enjoying this run because you want to be proven right about Ten Hag. And I said, I think that's really sad, because you may well get proven right about... If you're right about Ten Hag, you'll be right about Ten Hag. You don't need to not enjoy results. If you're right about Ten Hag losing his job, he'll lose his job in the summer. So why not? Why are you not enjoying the results? And that's what I find it very difficult. I find it very difficult on a personal level to understand the negativity around a team that's won 4 games in a row, which is very hard to do in this league if you're not Arsenal, Man City and Liverpool. And also a team that's vibrant and energetic and unified and has some really exciting young players in it. So, yeah, it's a weird situation, and I think that it's a tough one, because I actually think Ineos can't come out and back the manager, because it would be too early to do that. They've got to wait and see what happens at the end of the season. But there is I do acknowledge there is a danger that they wouldn't be the first ownership that doesn't really care who the manager is. They want to bring their own guy in. But I think it would be damaging to bring the own guy in, because my fear would be, and let's talk Nagelsmann for a moment. Nagelsmann failed at Bayern Munich, and nobody's really analysed why he failed at Bayern Munich, and I certainly don't have the answer. But there was all sorts of rumours. Apparently, he might have been dating a reporter. He fell out with some of the hierarchy. He's a bit of a arrogant man who went into Bayern Munich from Leipzig and rubbed a lot of people up the wrong way. But ultimately, he failed. He got the sack deservedly, and he failed. And at Germany, they haven't got the best national team anymore, but they've had some bad results as well. And he's apparently the guy for Manchester United. You bring Nagelsmann in. If any of those reasons that it went wrong at Bayern come to Man United, does Kobe Mainoo start next season? Does Garnacho start? Does Rasmus start? Or does he bring his own guy in? And this is the danger. Sometimes you're better off with what you've got. I know what Ten Hag's going to do. He's going to keep picking Mainoo, he's going to keep picking Rasmus, and he's going to keep picking Garnacho. I don't know what Tuchel will do. I don't know what Potter would do. I don't know what Hansi Flick would do. I don't know what Nagelsmann would do. And I think that's a huge risk. As I've said, I don't know whether Ten Hag's the right guy, because I don't think anybody knows who the right guy is for Man United. But what I do know is there is a journey here that I don't want to walk away from. I'm intrigued where this is going. You know, it's like going on a walk that you've never been on before, and it's actually quite pleasant. And I'm like, I actually want to continue on this walk. I don't want to go home. And that would be massively disappointing and concerning to walk away from. They might be worried if they don't. A rival will, says Robert McCormack. But I'm not. But Robert, I genuinely don't give a shit about Nagelsmann going anywhere else. I don't think there's a big queue of clubs wanting Nagelsmann either. I think he was hip after Leipzig, and there was a lot of disappointment when he went to Bayern. But I don't think I think Alonso's the hit manager at the moment. I don't think Nagelsmann is. I don't really think like we're missing out on anything. Erik Ten Hag is a top coach and they're in demand. Forget about sacking him. As anyone thought Bayern may approach him and take him from us. They have history, says Sir Jim. Jonathan says, I know that we had a lot of injuries, but so has other teams, yet I honestly don't see a pattern of play, says Jonathan. Well, again, Jonathan, I have to disagree with you. I don't know of another team in the Premier League that's had the extent of injuries we've got. The only team I think are similar are Liverpool at the moment, with the amount of injuries they've got in their midfield and in their attack, which could derail their title. But we've been missing Casemiro, Martinez, Luke Shaw, 3 massively crucial players for us, and we're not Man City, Liverpool, or Arsenal anyway. So I don't think anybody else has had the injuries we've had. I don't respect Brighton, maybe. I don't respect Chelsea's injury list because, let's be honest, they've spent £1 billion. If anyone else spent £1 billion, you wouldn't give them any. Newcastle as well have had a few. Michael has gifted a membership. Thank you very much. Ray says, the sack race has new meaning. Who is next to lose the job and say, I want United job, needs shutting down as it's not helping any of us with all the talk, says Ray. I don't think it, I've got to say, I find it incredible. I find it absolutely incredible. Look, I spent time with Rasmus. You saw the interview. Absolutely, 100% behind the manager. I look at the players in the last few games, unity. They could sack that manager quite easily. Absolutely behind the manager. I think there might be 1 or 2 players around Man United that don't want the manager to stay, and they may well get another chance in the summer. But I don't want them to have another chance. I don't think that's a reason for the manager to be sacked. But I think that it's interesting in the sense that it's not helpful. Ultimately, it's not helpful to be in a position that we are in, where we've rescued a top 4 race, and still have a noise around the manager. It's weird. I don't think I've never known this actually. The closest thing to this is the Arteta out movement. That is the closest I've seen to it. It makes absolutely no sense to me why we are discussing a manager's sacking when exactly what he said would happen has happened. He said when he got Casemiro, Martinez and Shaw back, things would improve. And it did. And we've won 4 games in a row. I find it really, really weird. I really, really do. Wickster, thanks for being a member for 17 months. Love you, Mark. What were you drinking tonight? Just pints. And what young defenders do we have in development, says Kyle? Well, Camboila at the moment. Renate gifted 5 memberships. Absolute legend. And Billy says, I want no part of any manager that is begging for the United job while we have a manager. People like that are low quality leaders. It's not a desirable trait, actually, Billy, is it? These managers looking for Erik Ten Hag jobs are snakes. The lot of them. We need Ineos to make a statement, says Michael Doherty. Once Ashworth is sorted, they need to take the pressure off Ten Hag. Come on, let's just back him and give him some time, says Red Devil. Thank you very much for that. And Lee W is a legend. Lee with a big W has just gifted 10 memberships as well. Absolutely fantastic. And M. Parker says, Erik Ten Hag in. I'm enjoying the youth, but isn't it concerning that no manager respects him? They're coming for his job while he's still hired, says M. Parker. And Erik Ten Hag has a +1 contract. Ineos should trigger that, says Charles. End the Erik Ten Hag out movement. He deserves the structure, says Kiz. And is it 19-year-old Amari Farm at Forson's replacing Højlund tomorrow? We'll talk about that in a minute. And if Ten Hag, that was from Man United 1999. And Johan says, if Ten Hag doesn't work, Lionel Scaloni is a shout. Yeah, look, I think that just on the fact that other managers are putting themselves in the ring, managers are very selfish. They are. Managers are very egotistical. And I'll give you an evidential story on this. And I like Mourinho, and I do actually like Nagelsmann. I thought at Leipzig he was really interesting. And I like Ten Hag. But look, managers are ridiculously selfish, and they're very self-serving, and they're very disrespectful of other managers. And Daniel Sturridge says, I meant what pints? Beer. And you have to be. You have to be. If you're going to be a manager, you've got to be thick-skinned. You've got to back yourself, because there will be times where people question you. And it's been to Manchester United's detriment over the last 11 years. And what I mean by that is, David Moyes gets sacked. Louis van Gaal comes in. Louis van Gaal gets sacked. Jose Mourinho comes in. Jose Mourinho gets sacked. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer comes in. Ole Gunnar Solskjaer gets sacked. Rangnick comes in. Rangnick gets sacked. Ten Hag comes in. None of those managers learnt anything from the previous manager. Some of those managers picked the same mistakes the previous manager got sacked for. And you know why? Because what they do is they come in and go, I don't care about the previous guy. I'm replacing him. I'm the boss. I don't need to learn anything about him, because I'm coming in with my own ideas, and you all get another chance. And this is the worst thing that can happen. It's taken us a new ownership to start implementing what Ralf Rangnick said 2 years ago. We never would have done what Ralf Rangnick said if the Glazers hadn't decided to sell. Ralf Rangnick spoke about structure, open heart surgery, clear out. He mentioned numerous players by name that are now playing for Chelsea, Manchester City and rivals. It's only 2 years later, because we brought Ineos in, that they're doing what Ralf Rangnick said. Ten Hag didn't take any notice of Rangnick. Solskjaer didn't take any notice of Mourinho. Mourinho didn't take any notice of Van Gaal. If they had, they might have not made the same mistakes that they made with the same players. Managers are really egotistical, and they have their own ideas. And that's why, another reason, I don't want to change the manager this summer. Because they'll look at the squad and they'll go, everyone's got another chance. And then it will take them 18 months to realise, if they'd looked at the previous 18 months, that had got rid of some of these players. And even Ten Hag's been guilty of that. Like, Ten Hag has used players that if he'd looked at the last year, he wouldn't have bloody used. And now, 18 months later, he's looking to get rid of those players. So when you look at managers touting for Ten Hag's job, they don't give a shit about Ten Hag. There's no camaraderie in the managerial world, because it's all about who's the best. Going back to sack a manager every 2 to 3 years, not selling players and running their contract down and buying every new manager's players, redundant and a cycle of failure, says the Inquisition. Gabriel has gifted 5 memberships, absolute legend, and a moderator. Gary's been a member for 18 months. Thank you very much for that. Akari, you're a legend, says Darren Maguire. Thanks for the membership, Mark. Can we have a poker night again soon? I haven't done that in ages, actually. Didn't Eric Ten Hag try to sell Maguire and McTominay, says Wan. Well, we'll never know the full truth of that. And to be fair, both of those players have had decent seasons, I think, compared to their last 3. But yeah, I can't really answer that. I presume he did. Paulson Sports Clip says Ten Hag has no style of play. He's a championship manager at best, just like Rashford and Bruno. Arguably the worst comment of 2024, but some idiot will probably agree with it. Hear me out. McTominay false 9, says Ray Cowley. Drop into the midfield, okay, not great, but he's dangerous in the box. Rashford is a number 9. Keep him on the wing, says Ray. Well, look, let's talk about this, because we can always go back to the other topic. So there is a strong rumour I'd almost forgotten this thing that I'm not going to tell you that I might tell you. It's not about this. Effectively, there is. I still don't know how to word it, and I've been bloody streaming for 25 minutes. Let's talk about Forsen first. So there is a rumour going round that Forsen is starting tomorrow. There is a rumour going round that Man United in training were playing with a front three of Garnacho, Forsen and Rashford. Now, this could be a shit rumour. It could be a true rumour. If it is true, first of all, to the Ahmad Brigade, I hear you. But can Ahmad play up front? He played up front against Wolves about 3 years ago. I think Solskjaer was in charge when maybe it was Rangnick. We played Wolves away, and he played as a false nine up front, and he played quite well. But I don't think Ahmad can play up front against Fulham. Ahmad would have to play on the wing. So if we're going to play Rashford left, Garnacho right, and Forsen down the middle, then I don't really think it's harsh on Ahmad, because you wouldn't play Ahmad down the middle. Well, I wouldn't. If Rashford was playing up front and it was Garnacho on the left and Forsen on the right, I think you'd say, that's a bit harsh on Ahmad. But what you've got to remember is that Ten Hag didn't loan Ahmad because he likes him, and Ahmad's had a bad injury. So I believe Ahmad will get his chance. I really, really do. I think we've just got to be patient about that. But bringing it back to Forsen, what you've also got to consider is that Erik Ten Hag hasn't missed when it comes to young players. He hasn't missed. Like, Mainu came in, and the plan was to play Mainu from the pre-season, and he's been a revelation. Garnacho across the Ten Hag era has grown leaps and bounds. Camboire is a very interesting one that's been given a chance. We don't know how good he's going to be. And recently, Forsen has come through. And what resonates with me with Ten Hag is, and I agreed with it, and some people didn't like it, he got rid of players that some of us wanted to be given a chance. Zidane Iqbal was a player that I thought was really talented, and I know a lot of you did, and he's moved him on. And, you sort of go, oh, what have we done that for? But I go back to what Ten Hag said over a year ago, and he said, I'm only going to pick players for the first team that are as good as the players I have in the senior team. And why, did he get it wrong with Iqbal? Whether he did or he didn't. He didn't get it wrong with Mainu, and he didn't get it wrong with Garnacho. And the interesting thing is, if he did decide to start Forsen tomorrow, Ten Hag obviously believes, from what he's seeing, that this lad is as good as what we've got in the first team. And that's massively exciting, because I don't know how good Forsen's going to be. I'm quite surprised about how he's sort of come to the fore in the last few weeks, because I wasn't expecting it. And that's not because I don't think he's good enough. I just wasn't expecting it. But what we do know about Ten Hag is he doesn't just go and recall Joe Hugel and go and put him up front, because he's got a plan for him. He obviously doesn't think he's ready for the first team at the moment. He doesn't just go and take anybody from the youth team and put them in the team like other managers have, who might be ready or might not be good enough. He only really does stick to that mantra that if he puts a young player in, it's because he believes they're as good as what's in the first team. So if Forsen does start tomorrow, I think it's massively exciting. I don't know. I don't have an inside track on that. I don't definitely know he's starting. All I can tell you is there are rumours. Olu says, what happens if there is no improvement next season? My only issue with Ten Hag is that even at Ajax and Utrecht, he never rotates. He would continue to run 14 players to the ground all season, says Olu. I get your point. I think it's one of the better points. But I will answer both points. First of all, if it doesn't improve next season, you get rid of him at the end of next season. But I think to get rid of him in this season would be massively predictive. Like, you don't know whether it's the right choice. If it went wrong next season, we'd know it was time to change. And that's why I would give him another year. To the second point about rotation, well, Ten Hag has said numerous times that we need a squad. Now, whether he needed a squad for Ajax or Utrecht is somewhat irrelevant, because in the Premier League, any idiot knows you need a squad. Arsenal need more players. They don't have the squad rotation that Liverpool and Man City have. Arsenal need it. If Declan Rice gets injured, they're in big, big trouble. If Saliba gets injured, they're in big, big trouble. If you want to compete in the Premier League, you need a squad. Look at Man City. And Ten Hag said that. So we already know that. And the positives about being linked to an Elise or a Neto, if you keep Rashford, Garnacho and Ahmad, and maybe even Anthony, is that you've got a lot of options. Deep Mixed Nation says, Malacia is being turned into Terminator by Ineos. Scary things are coming. I'd be scared if he got fit at this stage. Andy Weatherall, legend. Hope you're doing well. Not heard from you a while. Says he's gifted 5 memberships. Absolute legend, Andy. Hope you're doing well. And Marky says, can't we recall Greenwood back? I mean, I've never really thought of it like that. I presume we could do, but we don't need to. And let's whatever we do with Greenwood, I think we leave it till the summer. I don't think we need to well, we do need a striker. I mean, no. Look, I'm being a bit banter on a Friday night, but you raise an interesting point, Marky, actually, because we need a striker. So, you know, it's funny how some people think we might bring him back in the summer, but we'd never bring him back now when we need a striker. It's an interesting take, actually. There's absolutely no way we're bringing him back. Absolutely none. Eric Ten Hag stacked Rangnick at the back. Rangnick is a master in football, says Roque. Look, I'll tell you a little bit of a story, actually. There was this myth that Ralf Rangnick was got rid of because Ten Hag didn't want to work with him. It's not true. Rangnick, Man United, Merta and Arnold made the decision to get rid of Rangnick in the middle of March. And they made they made the decision to get rid of him because of what he was saying publicly, and it was damaging to them. And they made the decision that they didn't want to work with somebody that was basically throwing them under the bus. Rangnick and the Austrian job was a thing in mid to late March. We hadn't even decided we were giving Ten Hag the job at that point. I don't think Ten Hag got the job. And correct me if I'm wrong, I don't even know if Ten Hag had been interviewed for the job by the time Man United made the decision on Rangnick. But they certainly hadn't given him the job. There is a myth that Ten Hag sacked Rangnick. And Rangnick was gone way before Ten Hag got the job. And Rangnick was brought into the club to be an interim coach, but ultimately was brought into the club to be a director of football in some shape or form. And what United did is they brought him in. They didn't like what he was saying in the press conference, and they got rid of him. Because at that point, Arnold and Merta were very strong in the Glazer regime. The only thing I would say about Ten Hag is I don't think he picked up the phone to Rangnick and, you know, debriefed him. And but nobody does that. I think it's a big mistake, a really big mistake. I don't think Ten Hag picked up the phone with Rangnick and had a really big chat about the problems at the club, and he should have done. But Mourinho didn't do it with Van Gaal. People don't do it. In football, when a manager gets sacked and the next man comes in, did Graham Potter do it with Tuchel? Guaranteed. It's stupidity, but it's the ego of the managers these days. They don't pick up the phone. Did Sir Alex Ferguson do it with Ron Atkinson in '86? I doubt it. I don't know. AM United says, I just saw Gabby the Pratt get cooked by Goldbridge. It's not really that difficult. It's a bit of an open goal, mate. Marvin AM says, guess who wanted Ten Hag? I think Rangnick wanted him, yeah. I think he did, yeah. You know what? My point about that, Marvin, is that I think there was a dream team. I remember it. I remember this moment. And look, it's like sliding doors, isn't it? It didn't happen. There's so many sliding doors in life, and there's so many sliding doors in football. But I remember, I loved Rangnick. I thought he was brilliant. I absolutely, very rarely in football do I identify somebody and go, they're special. And I thought I really didn't like the treatment from the Man United journalists of Rangnick. They never liked him, and they ridiculed him at every juncture. And I think they did that because at that point they had a lot of sources in the dressing room who didn't like Rangnick. I don't think Ronaldo liked him, to be honest. I'm not sure. I don't think Ronaldo did. And I know a lot of players didn't like Rangnick. But I think that's because they went from Ollie, who was their mate, to Rangnick, who was a disciplinarian. And it's like going from nice warm showers every morning to cold showers. It was hard for the players. I respect that. But you know, I loved Rangnick's. I didn't like the football because the players just didn't want to do it. They did it for half an hour against Crystal Palace and then they quit. The players were a shithole. You know, that's the worst period of United I've seen in my life. That whole season really. But that Christmas to May under Rangnick was abysmal. And I don't blame Ralph Rangnick for it. I blame the players. It was toxic. Dressing rooms divided. They were downing tools. They were getting injured. That's probably the worst 5 months. And it was terrible under Solskjaer before that. But I blame the players for that. I think everybody does. But the press conferences were amazing. They were so good. I loved reacting to Rangnick's press conferences because he was the master at telling you the truth in a way that if you knew it, you could read it. And then towards the end, he was just very blunt. We need open heart surgery. The club's not got the structure it needs. It's not got the specialism. He was really, really good. And the problem was the Man United media slaughtered him. I remember reading articles where they tried to make out he's the worst manager Man United ever had. And I was like, well, you really don't understand football, do you? Because he's probably one of the best managers we've had post Sir Alex. The players just mutinied against him. But there was a sliding door moment. And the sliding door moment was there was a youth game where Ralph Rangnick was sat with Paul Mitchell. And I think it was around this time, maybe late March, maybe a month on. But there was a youth game where Ralph Rangnick was sat with Paul Mitchell. And for a moment, we dared to dream. Because at that time, it was the Ten Hag versus Poch debate. And there was that moment where you were like, if we get Ten Hag in and we retain Rangnick and we bring Paul Mitchell in, this could be something really interesting. And what happened is we got Ten Hag in, we sacked Rangnick, and we never brought Paul Mitchell in or a director of football. But there was an interesting, and Marvin's right. You know, Rangnick was I don't know how much input he had, but he was an advocate of Ten Hag. Hi, Mark. Why did you not play the match today against Drogba, Hazard, and Kaka? I would love to have played Hazard. I didn't get invited. You know, I'm on the outside now, looking in. I'd love to have played. Would have been good. Erin Ten Hag needs to stay. What better options are there? None. Simples. Keep up the good work, says Andy Weatherall. Thank you very much. Vacation Pappy says Rangnick was fired because he publicly told Arnold and Murta how to do their jobs and they got booty hurt. Erik Ten Hag probably would have loved working with Ralph. I just don't think there was ever a crossover between them, but there's a myth out there that there was. Chuck your questions in, everybody. It is Friday night. I'm happy to answer some of them. I'm going to put this in I have to be really careful here because I want to be professional and fair. But what I would say is I got some interesting information a couple of hours ago that I've got no reason to disbelieve, but I don't want to scaremonger with it. But remember a couple of years ago I said that Ronaldo won't play tomorrow, and he didn't, and nobody had the news, and I was getting people messaging me saying you're going to be cancelled, you're going to be finished when he turns up tomorrow, and then on the morning he didn't turn up. So I think there's a United player that might not play tomorrow. That's not Rasmus. However, what I will say is it's really not something to write home about. It's not first team, really. It's not. So there might be another player that misses out tomorrow, and it's only a minor injury apparently, but it's not like you don't not sleep tonight. That's why I've sort of left it till later because yeah, and you know what? We're a community, and I don't want to ever be that. We've never been that in 10 years. I don't want to not have a trustworthy community. where we keep things from each other. Sometimes you might have to do that, like the Rasmus interview. But I you know what, there may, and I hope it's inaccurate information, but it's not somebody who started last week, and it's not somebody who is, you know, it's not going to stop us beating Fulham, in my opinion. So yeah. Gifted 5 memberships, Jason Day. Thank you very much for that. And Lee Wolsey says, cards on the table, Mark. What do you think Sir Jim's first summer transfer window is going to look like? Player-wise, I don't know. I don't know, Lee. And I don't even think they know at the moment. But Jason Day says, big up the United stand, Eric Ten Hag in. I feel that Jason Day is a legend as well. 5 memberships. I don't know the players that we're going to buy, and I don't know the players we're going to sell. But what I do think will happen, and I think this is very dependent on keeping Ten Hag, right? If we keep Ten Hag, I think we'll get rid of somewhere between 5 and 10 players, and we'll bring in around 6, which is absolutely the right thing to do. And people will say, well, how can you get rid of 7 or 8 or 9 players and only bring 6 in? Well, we don't need to go. You know, if Greenwood goes, do you need to replace Greenwood? If Sancho goes, you need to replace Sancho. If Donny goes, you need to replace Donny. If Martial goes, you do need to replace him. My point is, not every player needs replacing. But I think that's, if I was predicting the summer, I'd say between 5 and 10 players go and 6 or 7 come in. If Ten Hag goes, I think that naturally impacts on the amount of players that go, because any new manager will come in and say, I want to assess the players before you sell them. You know what? And this is an interesting thing. I think I've touched on it. That's not necessarily true, what I just said. In the traditional world, if you sack a manager and a new manager comes in and the director of football says, we're selling these 9 players, the new manager will say, well, you're not, because you might get rid of somebody that I actually can get more out of. For example, Sancho. Don't sell Sancho because I think I can get more out of him. So if you bring a new manager in, we won't have a clear out. That's the normal thing. But not if you get a puppet. Not if you do what Chelsea did with Potter. If you get a puppet who is just so grateful for the job, you bring a manager in who's a coach, but he doesn't buy players and he doesn't sell players. He gets given what he gets. I don't want that at United. That's not what Pep does. It's not what Klopp does. It's not what Ancelotti does. It's not what Arteta does. I don't want that. But I have to acknowledge it. If they sack Ten Hag and they bring a manager in and they tell him, we're getting rid of the players, we're signing the players, you're just coaching them, we could still have a clear out. But I think that's massively dangerous. I mean, I get asked a lot of questions. I'll ask you a question. Tell me a successful side in history where the manager has got nothing to do with selling or buying players and has no input. He just coaches. Because there are clubs who do it. Chelsea have done it with Potter. They might even be doing it with Poch. There are some clubs out there that say to the manager, you're a coach. We will buy the players and we will sell the players and you will have very little input on it. I think it's terrible. I think it's disrespectful to managers. I mean, you can imagine Jurgen Klopp being at Liverpool and them saying, we're selling this player, we're buying this player, crack on with it. United could go down that route. I hope they bloody don't. But has anyone got an example of where that's worked well? It happens at Brighton. It does happen at Brighton, you're right. Would you class Brighton? I mean, I'm talking real success. I'm talking Premier League winners. I'm talking Champions League winners. Mark, I'm not Eric Ten Hag out, but I strongly feel you underrate De Zerbi and Nagelsmann. Did you see what he did with Sassuolo, with the players they have? Says Olu. I think De Zerbi's... Right, Nagelsmann's been sacked by Bayern and he's not done that well at Germany. That doesn't excite me. And De Zerbi at Brighton has had some horrific results this season that, all right, injuries have been bad, but I think De Zerbi's a risk. I think you've got to, with De Zerbi, you've got to look at what he does in season 3. Estrella, thank you very much. Welcome to Members Club. Thoughts on Theo Hernandez as Luke Shaw replacements as tier? Very, very good player. Are we going to buy a left back? If we are, put him to the list. BBC coach says, If we are fully Eric Ten Hag in, then 5 to sell should be 5 that does not suit Ten Hag ball. Aaron Wan-Bissaka, Maguire, Scooby-Doo, Bruno, Rashford, not player FC, ruthless and logical. There we go. Somebody just said Real Madrid in the early 2000s, but they weren't that successful, says Paul. Somebody actually said that Zidane didn't buy players. I don't know. That's why I asked the question. I know in the current game, Klopp's heavily involved in the recruitment. Pep's heavily involved in the recruitment. Arteta's heavily involved in the recruitment. I don't think any of those managers have the definitive final say. There's a relationship with the director of football, which is fine. That has to happen. As I said, we do need a director of football that can say no to the manager, but I wouldn't want a situation where the director of football decides who gets sold and who's bought and the manager has no input. But that does happen at some clubs. I wouldn't like that at Man United. I think that's too... Yeah, I don't think that... I don't like that. Mark, hope you're well. Do you ever think that Anthony could be a 9 or a false 9? He's agile, he cuts inside, could bring other players into it and could be a handful. Pillin, I think with regards to Anthony, we really need to see what he can do. I was very excited about signing him from Ajax. I liked him at Ajax. I think he was a lot more creative at Ajax. At Manchester United, I think he's very selfish with the ball. I don't know whether that's over eagerness to please. Could he play as a false 9? I've not seen any evidence of that. He doesn't look like a player to me that's really looking to play the ball quickly. I think he holds on to the ball for too long. I think he's got the natural talent to move the ball quicker, but he's also ridiculously left-footed. And if you're going to play on the centre of the pitch, it's difficult when you're one-footed. Like, it's difficult for a one-footed player to play as a number 10. So I don't see him as that, no. Dr. Stop says, thanks for being Ten Hag in, Mark. It's insanity fans want to compete against Barcelona, Bayern, Liverpool for a manager this summer. Big up the Goldbridge, big up United Stand. You know the rules. Thank you very much, mate. Lee W says, evening all, what player positions would you say are most essential in the summer? For me, centre-back, CDM and striker. Would you guys agree? Great show, Mark, says Lee. Well, we spoke about this morning, and this was apparently, literally, it's those 3 positions that United want to strengthen in the summer. So you may well get your way there. Eric Ten Hag deserves a season under the new regime with competent football people in charge and not businessmen like Arnold and Murta, says Mark. Hodgson's, I'm not reading that. Do you think I've done that one? And people who want to see patterns of play won't like Nagelsmann because Nagelsmann gives his players a lot of freedom. He just explains the basics of his system and rest defence and let the players play, says Jaden. From what I've seen about Nagelsmann, whether it's for Germany or Leipzig or Bayern, I don't think he's a great coach in close games. I think it either works for Nagelsmann or it doesn't. I don't think he's a great coach when it's a close game. I don't think and that sort of fits in with what you're saying there. He has an ideology and he gives his players the freedom to go out there and do it. And when it works really well. But in a close game where you need in-game tactics, I don't think he's specific enough. I don't think he is. I think it's, like you say, I think it's a freestyle that works really well when it works. But in the close, if you're 2-0 up and it goes to 2-2, I don't really see enough, tactical nous from Nagelsmann. And he's ridiculously young as well. I mean, that was the thing that I like him. I do like him. I've done videos on this channel talking about how I like him. But, there was always that question mark about Nagelsmann because he was so ridiculously young. I remember saying on this channel, Nagelsmann could be the greatest manager in the world because he's got 30, 40 years of management ahead of him. But also, he could just become the next Thomas Tuchel, who just disappears into mediocrity. His next move, what is his next move? Why is he not staying at Germany? And look, I would acknowledge it that T-Boss says, well, that could be the same as Ten Hag. It could be the same as Alonso. It could be the same as De Zerbi. Just because you're the hipster manager coming through doesn't mean you're going to be the next Mourinho or the next Pep. I'm massively intrigued to see what the next wave of managers successfully are. Because in 10 years' time, Real Madrid will have a manager. Liverpool will have a manager. We'll have a manager. Who are the next wave of managers? We're all, who's the next Ronaldo and Messi? Are we going to get one? Like there will be a next wave, and you want to get on that board and ride it, don't you? Thuto says you downplay every other manager. I don't. I don't respect them. That's the honest answer. I still think we're living in a world where Jurgen Klopp, Pep Guardiola, Ancelotti are streets ahead of everybody else. I think Mourinho's fell off. I think Tuchel's proven himself to not be at that level. I think Pochettino's proven himself to not be at that net level. And I think we're hoping on the likes of De Zerbi and Ten Hag and maybe Nagelsmann and obviously Alonso now and Almiron at Sporting. But they're not there yet. I remember when Jose Mourinho came through. Fucking hell. The arrogance of him when he slid down the touchline at Old Trafford with Porto. Every part of my body wanted him to be a one-hit wonder and fuck off. And, he wasn't. He's just an absolute legend. Box office. I think at this moment in time, I can't tell you who the next big thing's going to be. And username 1234 says, what about Hansi Flick? Well, it didn't go well at Germany, but that doesn't mean he's not a good coach. Yeah, look, there's going to be 3 or 4 managers that come through in the next 10 years who are going to take on the mantle. Who it's going to be, I don't know. I still hope that it will be Ten Hag. I still think we've got the right man. But I firmly believe we've got the right man at the moment. Ask me in 12 months. I just want him to get 12 more months. I think it's so important that he gets 12 months. And I'm not going to sit here and say we've definitely got the right man, but I think we've got the right man for the next 12 months. I think there's too many things to extinguish that would be dangerous. I don't want to extinguish the clear out in the summer that he knows he wants to do. Ten Hag knows the players he wants to clear out in the summer, and most of you will agree with them. Do we want to jeopardise that by changing for a manager who won't do it? Ten Hag knows he wants to build a team around Garnacho and Rasmus and Mainu. Do you want to extinguish that for a new manager that might not do it? And also this season we finally got a structure. Do you not want to give a manager a chance with a structure? And also this season we're jinxed. The injury stuff it's not even a joke. It's a jinx. We've been absolutely jinxed this summer this season with injuries. That has to be a mitigating factor. Anyway, what a show. Absolutely fantastic. And don't forget, it's match day tomorrow. So the fun begins again because we will be there for the watch along at 3 o'clock. And we will have people like myself who are desperate for Manchester United to win. And we'll have the Ten Hag out movement who deep down want us to lose and want to overanalyze every little bit of it and be negative. And it's always interesting in the live chat. So I will be there with you tomorrow, of course. Thanks for that. Everybody who's got involved, absolute legends. Don't forget as well, if you've not listened to the podcast yet, out today, weekend preview podcast. We had a special guest on there as well. Join the podcast movement with Goldbridge Saves Football. Completely different type of content. Scan the QR code with your phone. I haven't even tried it myself. I said that this morning. I could be sending you to porn. You'll all be scanning it now. Check it out though. Really appreciate it. New thing that I've been working on that always appreciate your... That's a picture of me. Arrogant. Always appreciate your support and please do support the podcast. And that's... Is that working?
Next best league in Europe is just a 2-story house. It's a long...
Do you think it's that big of a drop-off?
It is a big difference. And what's the second best league in the world?
Probably La Liga. Although, actually, I think Serie A.
Speak to them, lads.
Great debate. Listen to it on the podcast. The link works. Thanks everyone for watching. Take care. I'll speak to you tomorrow. It's match day. Thanks for watching.